Dzień dobry Państwu. Witam serdecznie.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome on the green path. We are going to speak again about climate, but not only. We are going to speak about climate leadership. I started with climate because this is of utmost importance. This is the greatest challenge today globally. When you follow what is happening during the Freedom Games, you will clearly see that it appears in every debate, every conversation, every context. Because it's difficult to have end-to-end discussion without touching the questions related to climate change. And this debate will focus on leadership. This is a great place to discuss leadership. Many political debates appear here. Leaders and male and female leaders come here. They come here, they get connected. So in the context of climate, we need to think what that is and how we can approach in the ever-changing times. My female and male guests are Agnieszka Muras, Leader School Head Educator, Olga Brzezińska. You've had the chance to see at the opening of Freedom Games, Leadership Academy, the lecturer of UW, UJ and AT, President of City Foundation, Antoni Bielewicz. You've had the chance to meet on the stage, Director of Climate Foundation Program Head. I'd like to start on a philosophical note. What is leadership today? The times are changing dynamically, as I mentioned, and the processes impact thematic areas, and they change the basic meanings of the notions that we understood for decades in a specific way. So leadership or leadership today differs a lot to what we understood 20 or 30 years ago. Olga, would you please refer to what leadership is today? Let me start by saying that I was overjoyed when I saw the title of the panel, because I found the word leadership in the words, in the title of the panel. Not what the leader is, because we might define leadership in many ways, but activity is the closest to my heart definition. This is the act, the activity. It mobilizes, activates people to advance, to do the job of any kind. In the times when we live, when we have turmoil, when we have lots of stimuli and geopolitical and civilizational turmoil plethora, and climate also, we should define leadership as an act, as a process that mobilizes and activates everybody, because the problem that we are facing exceeds individual activity scope. We need to act together, we need to act hand in hand. Today, I think, we no longer understand leadership as the function, the role, the power, and it is replaced with the processes which have a positive impact in a case, in a context, in a milieu, in a society. This is how I want to set the discussion. Not only do we join those who formally feel that they might have impact in boundless things. That is most fundamental, because every discussion about politics, education, culture, or any other thing cannot happen without this context. Because what will we be discussing when the planet is dying? The same question goes to Agnieszka. In the context of your work, the Leaders School, I'm a graduate of this, and I remember the atmosphere that we had when I was a participant at the Political Leaders School. And I've got a feeling that we talk a lot about ideas, about acting together. As I understand, the objective to educate future graduates of the Leaders School is to prepare them to play the function of leaders. How do you see that in the context of leadership, as Olga mentioned that? I like the vision. I like describing leadership as a process, because in our programs and discussions and activities, we try to speak about something that applies to us in the context of climate change. We are doctors, politicians, we've got public functions, doesn't matter. No matter what is the responsibility level, how we want to impact the environment, be it a rural community or commune or a big city, or you're an MP in Warsaw. Each and every one of us is a subject of a climate catastrophe that we are facing. So in the context of leadership and climate change, it is important to say whether the discussion should be held. It's over, because it applies to every one of us, wherever we are, Piotrkowska or Freedom Games. This is the first thing. We are in the process. And the vision that leadership is not a man wearing a suit. Sorry for saying that. But it's kind of like this. When we think about global leaders, we think about all these important guys wearing suits, wearing a tie. I'm sorry, Antoni. Who shake hands and say, you need to change something. They return to their business and forget. I am ridiculing this but I'm kind of sorry when I think about COP and all other ones that pertain to climate, that bring together people of power. Conference of Parties, let me explain. These are annual meetings of heads of states, for those who do not follow that precisely. Oh, I'm sorry. In this sense, leadership as a process, this is the line of thinking that I like. The previous narrative didn't prove right. It proves right when you talk about wars, something that is here and now, action, reaction, that is fast. But when we speak about something that is a phenomenon that is intangible, you cannot see it. Like, even if you see there is no snow in winter, it's volatile, it appears, you cannot grasp it, and it is going to be out of its nature the biggest challenge when it comes to your imagination, including leaders. And for us, who are ready to take responsibility for the shape of the world in the future, here and now too, and it's very difficult. And this is the lesson that we need to do, the homework that we need to do. We need to be in the process, ongoing process, that is a demanding process. So the question to a man wearing a tie and a suit. Antoni, before you refer to what was said by your four speakers, I'd like to challenge you, and the challenge pertains to the title of the session. Leadership is a very important task, but can we possibly speak about climate leadership if we observe the debates in the context of challenges of today's world? This climate cannot be detached from the rest of tasks. We cannot speak about economic and climate and political and social leadership in detachment. So climate leadership discussion, if you want to narrow that down to the question of planet, to the changes that we observe in nature, would marginalize very important social questions or economic questions that I mentioned. What is it like in your opinion? In my opinion, you can speak about specific characteristics on new phenomenon of new leadership model that is required, that boosts you to act, to counteract climate changes for a number of reasons. In a number of years, we won't think about leadership in the context of climate change, but many changes and challenges that we're in for. But the climate change seems to be the first, the harbinger of the changes that we are in for. So what is the climate change? It's a challenge that pertains to social economic life on planet Earth. It's about new energy generation technologies, employing people, new business models in industry, climate justice, human rights, indigenous people's rights in the areas where there is mining for different resources or the mining is discontinued there sooner or later. It's a vast topic. It's a broad topic. And the second, climate change is one of the key elements of the poly-crisis that we are facing. We are all overwhelmed. We are facing many things. Cost of life, air impurity, social inequalities. Climate is somewhere at the basis. And the third element that is important in the context of leadership. In order the climate change to be prevented, we need mobilization for all of us. The problem that we discuss in most books pertains to a group of people, to publicity or clearly defined team of a company, army unit, artists squad, whatever. So we are speaking about diversified group now, younger and older people, men and women, or people who identify themselves this or that way, developing, and underdeveloped countries people. So it's a challenge for all of them. These people need to be mobilized. And the last thing that I find hard to speak about when I'm the head of the foundation that tries to protect the climate against the climate change, this is one of the elements that is difficult to have a positive goal attached. We try to make any possible endeavor to avoid the worst scenario, to have it bearable though bad. So when you motivate people, this kind of attitude is hard, because if you motivate people to act, not to have it worse, this requires new capabilities and attitude. So leadership in climate change is a specific term. To finish with a positive example, at the last 2 or 3 panels I had critiques with regard to climate conferences organized by United Nations. But these conferences bring small changes year after another, and these limit climate change. And these can be seen in Europe. We can complain that developing countries or new economic superpowers do not adjust with the pace that is set up by Europe and the developed world, but without any doubt, we can see the increase of RESs, moving away from fossil fuels in all sectors, not only transportation. And it's done thanks to the leadership of a group of people who have impact, formal or informal power. You attend some of these conferences, or at least you observe them. This formal hierarchy, somebody's president or activist from Sweden, are of not great importance, because this is a new model that everybody has a role to play for. It's like a relay run. You take the leadership. I'm going to give you the floor so that you can refer to what Antoni said. Let me return to the concept of the names of climate leadership. I was thinking about transformation leadership more of, which considers lots of different elements. So there was a housing policy discussion yesterday that is not directly related to climate change, but social economic changes that we foresee in climate crisis too. It is a part of it. So therefore the concept or the idea to have this broader perspective when you look at this issue. And I'd like to have Agnieszka and Olga to have their say. You decide who is first. Additional theme in the context of what Antoni was saying. In your opinion, because you both wanted to take the floor, this present-day leadership, do you see a chance for hope? In the previous panel, we were speaking about active hope that motivates to act, that sets the vision, that mobilizes your powers even if there is a great threat or a great challenge. Climate conferences, I'd like to defend my opinion. It was the perspective of somebody who would like to see radical changes. The ones that are apparent. As I was trying to say, the problem seems, well, when you speak from the perspective of people who are regular, ephemeral, even because these people do not attend conferences like ours. So visible changes, visible gestures from the side of those who wield power are game changers. We speak about the power of the words. When we discuss about the possible looks of the world, well, this place could be the change triggers. So this is my activist soul. Let's do more, because we kind of run out of time. Everybody says we are running out of time. It's a reference to what you're saying, Veronika. Leadership changes. There was a time in the discussion when leaders had their role. It was a long time ago. There is a time when leadership, when we preach doom and gloom about catastrophe, when there was a voice for NGOs, and we are kind of demonstration of this. But there is a time for you. We like to see the time when political class, this or that one, this or that context, whatever that is, they take it to their hands and take responsibility for whatever is happening.
In the light of Poland, I won't take it globally. Governments differ. They have their rights and reasons, but I believe that in the light of Poland, in the context of how great welfare we live in, what social awareness we have. We talk about missing education here. That's true. On the other hand, everything has been said on the topic. We need no more education. We need to take the key elements and turn that into action. That can only be done by the decision makers, so that we can affect the system. I encourage everybody to make changes on the individual level, reduce your consumptionism or expand your self-awareness. But we are a bit of a society who cares for the principles, and the climate change in the context of political changes by the right or left-wing parties. I'm sorry to say, but well, we first of all need to change the narrative, which is not comfortable for us individually, and it doesn't appear, because who will win elections? If you're here, you need to reduce your needs. That's not a catchy election slogan. I want to say everything at the same time, and I'm diversing so far away. I want to say that this is a time for the policy or politics to get down to work. It's not NGOs, it's not experts' time. It's all done. Let's move one step forward. Olga. Well, I believe we need to talk about climate leadership. The transformational adjective is nice for me, but it obscures the matter because it blocks the light. We want to cast on something. The more we speak of climate leadership, the better climate we are building for climate leadership. Authorities are expected to do three things. Set the direction, guarantee protection in times of change, and order standards. You cannot ensure the three of those in climate leadership. The purpose is the primary thing. When we speak climate leadership, the vector shows climate as something we serve, because leadership is serving a case, serving society, serving a need. So I believe this is elementary to speak about climate leadership, not just leadership per se. Transformation is hidden in the leadership word. The concept is to get us to a positive change defined by society. So I'm closing those definition considerations. I'd say, yes, let's name it climate leadership, because we need to resonate more so that it covers everybody and we understand the process alike. Authority is not accessible to everyone. It can be given and taken back, while leadership can be to anyone, no matter where somebody is in the structure. We could see examples of leadership coming from the purpose, not from the position or from the role. But I think we'll have more examples. Very much so. I would like to now go to the community of purpose. Something Agnieszka mentioned about removing our suits, about the new concept or the new shape of the leadership in contemporary times, and I would like to highlight young people, the youth. How would you see the role of young people in leadership? Yesterday there was a very interesting panel. If you missed it, I recommend, where young people from different initiatives, also pro-climate initiative, spoke about their perspective of contemporary leadership, of political decisions, social debate, and they addressed the perhaps not the role of young people, because they said it's not the age, it's attitude to equality. respect to human needs, not just focusing on economic indicators. And it seems to me that in the discussion on climate leadership, that voice is more and more heard and extremely important. Antoni, over to you. Without a shadow of a doubt, young people gave a new pulse to this new climatic movement. I agree with Agnieszka. It used to be the talk of experts, professors, etc. Then that was a topic for NGOs and partially for governments. At one moment it became socially popular, also thanks to the involvement of young people from the world. We all have Greta Thunberg in our mind as the icon of the youth movement, but there are far more such young people from different places, different attitudes. What did the young people do? Well, first of all, they suggested a new working model. They removed half of the problems the traditional movement to prevent climate changes raised. We can't afford, it's complicated. Let's wait for technologies. They said, no time to wait, let's do. It's this blah, blah, blah by Greta Thunberg. Stop saying we can't, start thinking we can. They brought new air to democratization, to dissolve the structures, which is vital. And for me, the key point was that those young people a couple of years ago redefined the dilemma we are facing, and by that they gave totally new motivation to the climate movement, because for a long time the dilemma was technocratic, telling us how much can the global temperature go up till the end of the century. And they named the dilemma of their future. If we do not do anything now, you expert may not be with us, but our children and grandchildren will continue to suffer because of actual changes that affect our lives. They will reduce our prosperity, living, enjoying the joys we have on this planet. By this change of the dilemma, they brought a new motivating element for everybody. They imposed the new perspective, and partially they took over the traditional actors in the climate discussion, think tanks, organizations, governments, which now discuss the future of climate changes. So it's a truly remarkable contribution. The question is what shall happen later? But that's for later today or next year. We'll see if we can forecast the future, but let me give the floor to Olga with an additional idea for food for thought, an extra topic, and I want to address this question to you, Olga, Agnieszka, in the light of the new leadership model, unflattened structures, democratization, taking off the suits, thinking about social matters. But can you see here in this long structured thinking of leadership, a man sitting on a chair at a table with a microphone? Can you see space here that would include a more feministic narrative, not about just indicators and goals, which are important, as you said, Olga, but also in this thinking of sort of a care, empathy, caring about the planet. I talked to Jadwiga Klata and Jadwiga Kośmińska, Women versus Climate. And the perspective they presented is highly important in the context of new thinking about leaders and leadership that considers more of our needs and reaching the values that used to be neglected, apathy, accountability for our shared planet. Let me begin with young people. I believe we all should be grateful to young people that they actually gave this humanistic and civilizational aspect to climate change issues, because they noted it that we have no future. If nothing happens, if nothing changes, we shall have no future. We cannot plan because there is nothing to plan. If in the horizon you can hear about 12 years or any other calculation, so when I'm 20 I can think, where am I headed? But in this context I also need to mention another critical aspect which is often ignored. That caused relaxation among people, because they think young people will take care, they have it. But by what right do we quit our accountability for what we can do and toss it to those who are not to be blamed? And they need to fight for themselves, for their future, so that we can stay in this relative comfort of not confronting because somebody else is dealing with the issue. If we started by saying that leadership is mobilizing people to common effort for a positive change, the fact that somebody raises a hand, gets organized and acts, that will not relieve us of our responsibility. This is extremely important. I can see how young people actually get burned out and frustrated because they are left on a battlefield, not just in their own case, but they are left alone. And this is a kind of appeal, just to bear it in mind. Do not leave the young people alone with that. Perhaps this young climate strike may have this name, young, but it's our common issue. I'm also happy that you are raising the issue of women. Nobel Prize winner, pioneer in environmental protection, Ms. Matai, said, the higher you reach, the less women there are. And she noted that what is so important, namely systemic changes, frequently happen with insufficient or non-participation of women. Yet we have evidence that female leadership is needed. It makes you more sensitive. It ensures diversity. It gives a perspective that may be so necessary and will never appear in a non-diversified milieu. Based on the pandemic crisis, in 194 countries, there was a survey which showed that wherever women were at control, the countries coped better with the crisis. It's proven by research. So we have to speak about leadership of women, and climate needs more women who shall be able to have influence. What you are saying, the care, I would say it's not just a domain of women, but women bring diversity, which is so necessary to bring a positive change. Thank you very much, Agnieszka. I concur to everything, but I also think, agree with what you say about young people in exactly the same meaning you said. I would also add that to this division women-men, I would add what is humanistic and what's technological. To some extent, women today are more thought of as humanistic aspect. And we can see sensitivity, turning some process socialized, and the technical aspect, mechanical, emotionless, that's the domain of men. I would also mention that the world expects everything to be mechanized, dehumanized to some extent. And in a general discourse, it's headed this way. But we believe that the society needs something different. When we look at surveys on the youth, what matters to them, a part of the climate change, which is so highly ranked amongst the priorities, there is also mental health, the sense of security, and in the light of our taking responsibility of the world we are going to leave to the youth, and I'm at least with one leg in that group. Yes, I agree. We cannot say it is your world, you should take care of it, because to this vat of uncertainty we only add more. And the problems would not be happening next to human mental health, next to demographic problems, that the society is aging, the needs are changing, the structures look different, social ties are torn apart, and the narrative that tech optimistic, that it all should go to mechanization of processes, deprived of those soft functions delivered by women, is wrong. The more I support more space for women, the features that characterize us would be critical in the years to come for society. Not just for society, matters we are about to act, but in life. These will be more and more important.
Chciałabym tylko podkreślić,
I'd like to highlight the fact that, as Olga said, we do not want to make artificial divisions between men and women, because they are intertwined in some areas. This is to shake hands, to bring in ladies to discussions without building bridges, without building walls between sexes, rather bridges we should build. I can wait. I'd like to speak about the next. At the human level, we don't have to squabble. Men show empathy, they are carers. But when we think where is the decision-making place, let me refer to research. Presence of women in parliament show that there are more rigorous regulations when it comes to climate combat. The presence of women in international fora, COPs, is an incentive to accept positive solutions. Any COP finishes with regulations, be it satisfactory or not. It's a horse of a different color. But the presence of women is a proponent for more progressive policies. Therefore, there is a difference. If there is only men parliament, the research shows that this perspective is not taken into consideration. Women are not taken into consideration. This is why I'm speaking about this diversification. I'm not saying that men are only technical, they are not. They are devoid of empathy, because we would land in a cul-de-sac. I'd like to see whether there are any questions from you. Yeah, there are 2 questions, right. I'll take into consideration, but before that a short discussion here. And then Q&A time. Recapitulating to what was said until now, how I understand reflections. Let's discard the ladders. Let's flatten the structures. We are all equal in the context of climate crisis in the context of leadership. Let's leave hands to young people. Let's not leave them to their own device. Let's not say that they can cope on their own because they are more determined about their future. And the third thing, more women and the features that we were speaking about. The features that are more feminine, more decision-making women. Do you think that all of us sitting here and those watching us online, can you be a leader for your own scale? Because we were speaking about discarding these old structures. It doesn't have to be political. Leadership does not have to happen on the podium or in front of cameras. I know, and you've known lots of people, men and women, who do grassroots work. They are not visible, recognized, but their daily work and their determination results in titanic work. Hardly do they realize how heavy and effective it is. Can you be a leader? Me and Agnieszka will agree. Leaders School and Leadership Academy for Poland try to convince people that Leadership Act is available anytime, any place for anybody. You can always do something. Sometimes you just say no, stop. Sometimes you take a case and you put it to the limelight so that people can see. You don't change something, it means you choose it. And a change, even the slightest change, can be triggered with a small step. Greta, that we were referring to, became an icon that most people refer to. He was just a teenager. She had a cardboard box with wording on. She was sitting in front of the parliament. Did she have power? Media? No. She had the objective, the purpose. She had the courage to do something unpopular, to show something unpopular. Third of all, her further way shows that she's a good leader. She keeps learning. If you stop learning about facts, data, facts and figures, you will suffer backwardness. You will die intellectually. And another thing, communication. If you can talk to people, if you're a good listener, you build a platform. You mobilize people, show that we can do things together. More than me, less than the government, but still. Credibility is what Greta had. She said, I want to change something. I don't like the world we are living in. It's the most important when it comes to leadership. So credibility, in addition to the latter. Being authentic when we think about the objective we've chosen. Antoni, would you like to refer to anything? I do believe that each and every one of us is a leader at some point. It's a relay. It's not polemics, but it's advancing. I wouldn't cross or discard the help of these suit wearers, because the energy that has been created should be targeted at things. There are certain people or personages that clearly define the direction. What's the speed? What kind of methods? So there is room for democratic leadership, more brave ones who become leaders, the heads of the groups. So this is the kind of balance. And there is no return to the world of leaders who do the job single-handedly. They do it by force, manipulation, power of will, and thus impose the method of acting without consulting. And now Q&A session. If you could raise your hands, let me start here. The third row, then over there, the man wearing a blue outfit. Good afternoon. You know, by profession, as a journalist, I deal with climate change. I agree with everything you're saying. I am into one question that I touch upon when talking with my friends. Are we ready to become climate leaders? Because in podcasts, interviews, there is this question of agency, how to instill agency in people, how to make them act. How would you do that? How would you assess the general public's readiness to be climate leaders and, on the other hand, to follow other climate leaders? Yeah, I'd like to give you the room to answer. Very good question. We've got the potentials. The dilemma has not been properly defined. We think about climate change in the context of resources and us paying more. Somebody will carry the bigger burden. But it's a bigger dilemma. It's a place to reformulate it. In my opinion, the question is, who should bear the greater burden in association with the transformation? So if you form the dilemma this way, it can open large groups of people to become involved in climate change combat. Some groups see that, miners know that they won't bear the cost. They don't want it. They do not want to have over-normative transformation burden. They expose it, air out, with the methods that trigger the change or keep the previous one. Olga, you'd like to refer? I'm convinced, or I'd like to believe, that our society is more ready to have all kinds of solutions and narrative compared to what we think. The political class narrative shows. Jacek Kuroń once said that democracy guarantees that won't be managed better than we deserve. So I'm thinking it's a question time, and we return to these questions for the third day of the Freedom Games. On the 15th of October, we will make our choices. It needs to be a wise choice, in agreement with what we believe. Don't choose simple solutions, simple narratives that we are scared with, because they've got the reason. It's not our well-being, but our cynical goals. Short term, they want to just win elections. And I believe that we are wiser. But it's difficult for us to navigate in this jungle of narratives, to cherry-pick something that I think of. This is why we call it climate leadership, because those who are climate leaders are brave enough to say unpopular things. They don't promise things that are nice and pleasant and easy. It won't be. It's not the same question. I have no doubts we are ready. Why? I'll give you my example. I come from Silesia, from the family of miners. So the themes associated with mining ethics are close to my heart. I was talking to the representatives of the Marshal's office of Katowice, who didn't think about just transformation, but how to convince diversified milieus to become ambassadors of just transformation. What climate change is, What kind of transformation should be witnessed in mining areas now, not in 20 years' time, so that the region is able to wade through that without failing? It's not a question whether we can do it, the question is how. But there is awareness in the decision-making places. Regardless the narrative in this or that television. So it doesn't matter at a level that this is a niche topic. It's discussed at homes when sitting over lunch. It's time to grasp the opportunity and do it. We cannot leave it. We cannot give up on that. And the question from the lady wearing a blue cardigan. Let's have two questions. The first question from you, Carolina. I'm a climate activist and I have observed this debate for a number of years. And my question is, we are short of leaders or groups. It's not people, but groups that are the leaders of climate change combat in Poland. We don't see many people in Poland of this kind, not many activists. There used to be groups in the past, but they are less active. What can we do to have more leaders? Because just a bunch of people won't able to sustain it, and the topic is vast. And one more question. I'll have to ask you to talk it further off stage. One more question. Thanks, Wojtek Makowski. My question goes to Agnieszka. How do you think, what kind of context is polarization for the climate change? At the center of the political stage collapse. Yesterday, we had the Leaders School's graduate meeting. There were young people from Law and Justice and people from PIS and Civic Platform were shouting at me for pro-climate issues. And I can see that this polarization has got this chilling effect for young aspiring people. Agnieszka, first to answer. Just 1 minute, so briefly. The answer requires a separate debate. There is no single answer. On the one hand, we should have leadership that is value-based. You are speaking about this collapse, or the fact that the political scene is collapsing. On different sides of the barricade, we refer to things called populism. It's hard to answer it. I don't have the answer what to do with this, how to put this topic on the agenda. It's a great lesson to learn for all political parties and the change of narrative with regards individuals. When I look at PIS getting power, they refer to whatever is here and now for you, human. And the last short answer to the question. I'll answer it. It's the role of the older group that's been longer in the group. You've done your job, and the old ones need to see that. They need to support you in development. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks to our speakers. And I hope there'll be a chance to ask more questions, to discuss it between panels. We had Agnieszka Muras, Olga Brzezińska, thank you, Antoni Bielewicz, man wearing a suit. Thank you.
Dzień dobry. Dzień dobry. Pan Zbigniew Hołdys.
Zgadza się. Dla znajomych Zbyszek.
Serio? Zbyszek. Nadchodzące wybory są zbyt ważne, żeby zostawić je bez kontroli. Dołącz do obywatelskiej kontroli wyborów. Zróbmy wybory bez picu.
It's not always easy to recognize. It may look like this, or like this. It may be a burden, but it is a responsibility that we embrace nonetheless. But if it means this for one person and this for someone else, maybe it ultimately means being there for one another. It isn't handed to us, but we know where to find it. And how it feels, how it tastes, and what it sounds like when we finally have it. It means different things to different people, but for many, it means everything. And if we all fight for it, it will eventually bring us together.
Ihre Ausreise.
Jestem z zawodu lekarzem. Zajmowała się diagnostyką chorób nowotworowych.
W Białorusi zajmowałam się mikrobiologią i molekularną biologią.
Byłem nauczycielem szkoły podstawowej.
Naszym celem jest budowanie umiejętności, które są ważne na polskim rynku pracy.
Szybko nabierają takiej pewności siebie, bardzo szybko się uczą.
Wszystko możliwe, kiedy starasz się.
Każdy wybór ma swoje konsekwencje.
Dziś na kazaniu o takich jak ty mówili, że to morderczynie.
A wiesz, że ta, która ci pomogła, trafi za kraty?
Trzeba mieć sumienie.
Jak mogłaś to zrobić własnej matce?
Aborcja to najgorsza zbrodnia.
Gdybym ja podjęła taką decyzję, nie byłoby cię tutaj.
Organy państwa nie będą przyglądać się temu obojętnie.
Życie i zdrowie kobiety jest najważniejsze.
Stop kryminalizacji aborcji.
Kobieta decyduje.